I'm Merrill Moss, president and founder of Merrill Moss Media Group, where we represent authors, and booktrip.com, which is a community for book lovers. I've founded Meridian Editions, a publishing company. We are here today to talk about a very important topic, education. I'm so pleased to bring these two experts with vast experience in both academia and the workplace today. Our conversation is going to feature these two leaders in the crusade to empower both educators and students with the strategies and tools to build a better future. Dr. Sabrina King, who has been an educational thought leader for decades, most notably at the New York City Department of Education, the nation's largest school system, where she served as Chief Academic Officer of Curriculum and Professional Development. She is currently the founder and CEO of the educational consulting group ATAPE, which means all things are possible with education. And introducing Ed Hajim, whose life reads like a movie, really. He had a challenging beginnings. He went on to become one of America's most successful executives on Wall Street and has devoted the past 2 decades to the things most important in his life, which are education and philanthropy. He's had several books, On the Road Less Traveled, An Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage to the Boardroom. That was his memoir. And his second book, The Island of the Four Ps. Ed's innovative life design curriculum, which came out of the Island of the Four Ps, is currently being utilized in schools and universities as a unique and personalized approach to help young people build a roadmap for successful lives. So today we're going to open this discussion with Dr. King and Ed Hajim, talking about the imperatives in today's educational environment. And Dr. King will discuss the need to empower academic leadership and the tools to succeed. And Ed Hajim will emphasize the importance of developing curricula, such as what he has developed, the life design curriculum, that enables students to make sense of today's fast-changing career landscape and shape their own goals. And he likes to say, schools prepare students to make a living, but not make a life. That's something that Ed is going to talk about as well. We're going to kick it off with Sabrina, and then I'm going to leave it to the two of you to have a discussion. So Sabrina, would you start us off by saying, what do you think is the most important for academic leadership in today's educational environment? And with that, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Merrill.
Thank you, Merrill.
I'm always happy to talk about education, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you, Ed, today, particularly as we think about the current educational landscape. It's February 27th, 2025, and we're certainly in a period of uncertainty. We're in a period of fear in terms of funding. How will public schools, for example, be funded? A period with potential systems change, i.e., will there be a United States Department of Education? And a period of concern that significant areas of progress may come to a halt, such as the decades-long work leading up to Black studies being a part of the curriculum in many schools. My work centers on partnering with and empowering educational leaders in the work to improve student outcomes. And particularly given today's environment, I wanted to begin to talk about some areas of academic leadership that I think are even more urgent today. The first one that is always front and center is improving student literacy. We know that there is a lot of attention to test scores, but the work around improving literacy is really around students literally being able to read and comprehend. And it's amazing that there's still so much work to do in that regard, even though we know best practices, we know the science of reading, and many districts are really strengthening that work. But in addition to being able to literally be able to read, students need to be able to read the world and read their lives. So our work, we are often brought in to schools because of a need to improve literacy, but we work with educators in the broad work in terms of what that means. Another area, and feel free to interrupt at any time, another area that is critical in terms of academic leadership is the strategic planning work to lead to the collective effort that's needed to really drive outcomes. There's today's education environment, which it's hard for people not to have on their minds, and today's societal environment. There are different accountability requirements. There are multiple, many of our schools and districts have students that have various achievement levels, that bring various strengths and talents to the table, as well as learning needs. There's a diversity of experience in terms of educator practice, and often there's seemingly a lack of time to get it all done. So the strategic planning work that can help align effort so that goals can be achieved is a lot of the work that we do as well. Another area that connects to the strategic planning is the professional learning that is so important for the education profession at large. I often say that learning to teach is a career-long endeavor. Learning to lead is a career-long endeavor.
Absolutely.
It is. So the idea to really support the creation of learning communities where educators can learn. I mean, I believe that professional learning for educators, we need to invest in that as much as we're investing in the education for students. And then the other area of work that is needed and is significant is strengthening the curriculum so that it is rigorous for all. Sometimes we have some schools that have a rigorous curriculum and higher order thinking and critical thinking. And we also have schools that have worksheets.
Right.
So strengthening the curriculum so that it's rigorous, so that it's relevant and inclusive of students' interests and ideas. I was a doctoral student at Teachers College and studied with phenomenal curriculum experts. And the perennial curriculum question, what do students need to know and be able to do, is part of that work. So we work with schools toward creating more meaningful, rigorous, and culturally responsive K-12 curriculum so that students will want to be in school, so that students will see themselves in the curriculum and see how school can be helpful to them. So that's one of the reasons I'm also really excited to talk with you, because I know that you've been doing work on curriculum. And some of what we know is that we need to prepare students to be successful in school and successful in life. And we need additional tools to support that work. So would love to talk with you about the work that you've been doing as well.
Sabrina, you laid the groundwork beautifully. You've laid out the planks of problems we have. And I think that what you're doing the Lord's work now in your activity. We need people to think just like you've thought, to go through the possibility of talking about the old 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. You have to have the basics. Then you have to go on and then understand what the student needs. And that's where I come in. And it basically, what you're talking about, and you clarified this brilliantly, we're going through a period of huge change. So I think the biggest challenge with education today is coping with change. Think about it. The technological change which is going on right now. I mean, AI can do things that, that you're operating at 100 to 1,000 times the human capability. And it's going to infuse the entire educational system. If you remember how the change went from, I always kid about it, from slide rule to computer to internet. Now, those were big changes, but this is even an order of magnitude change from that. So you got a big technological change, not only in AI, but you have technological change across the board, the capability in video, audio, transportation, and so forth. So there's a big technological change. There's also a geopolitical change, which people have to understand. Politically, you hinted at it a couple of times, huge political change that people have to understand. And then finally, along with all of that, you end up with the sociological change that's occurring in the United States and around the world. Teachers not only have to teach the 3 R's, and it's very important that they do that, but they've got to understand that they're in a new society. But you go back to what you said. I think that education still, it's the solution to everything. You said this, a similar sort of expression.
I believe it.
My point, though, my new effort, and everybody has a little crusade, is in taking this problem, all right, and focusing it much more on the student than the subject. In other words, I want to try to find things to test for these students. I want them to find paths they want to follow. I want them to ask more of the question, because it's much more important in today's world to say, who am I? What are my interests? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? What are my talents? And what are my weaknesses? So these young people have to realize that there's an extremely complex society which they're entering. Unlimited opportunity. The complexity and the unlimited opportunity actually come together. They have more paths to follow than ever before. And I also think that I'd like to sort of ask them the questions that I propose in my book. What are your passions? What are your interests? What are your dislikes? What are your likes? And by the way, what's your context? Your context is totally different than if you're in New York City than if you're in Kiev, or it's even different if you're in New York City in Omaha. So there's a context, and if you come from a very comfortable family or a distressed experience. So passions have to be brought out. And by the way, certain passions are exercised right away, and some have to be put over here, and you have what I call, sort of a wait and see attitude. That may be something, that you're going to do 20 years from now. In fact, as in my course, the students are required to have 3 different paths, so that maybe someday they'll go back to the second path. I think they also have to establish their principles, because the world is getting more complicated. The line between what's right and what's wrong gets to be pretty fuzzy when you get out there. So you establish your principles early on, and it basically happens in high school. Starts in I guess, in your teenager, you start to ask the questions, what rules do I want to follow? What lines want I cross? And you start testing them. Then, of course, I think in today's world, partners are vital.
Yeah.
I believe you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And in each circumstance, the people require different characteristics. And you've got to start to sort those. Of course, the most important partner is P1, as I call her, or him. Finding a partner you can share your life with and who will support you and be supported. I'm very lucky, been married for 60 years. And without my Barbara, I wouldn't be here today. But I find that different kind of partnerships are going to occur in this particular period of history. I mean, I've had experience in business, and I have particular kinds of partners, and I've gone to becoming the chairman of the board of trustees of a university. I had to have different kinds of partners. And then finally, I think this all has to be put into some kind of a plan. And in that plan, you come up with things you want to test. I wanted to be a physicist, so I took a physics course, advanced physics course in my sophomore year of college. Looked around and realized this wasn't something I could do or wanted to do. I also want to actually spread this out. I want to get away from the idea you have to go to college. One of my other crusades is what people call vocational education. I have changed that name to professional education. Being a nurse, a marine engineer, hospitality worker, a diver, a public safety officer. Those are true professions. And the fact is, we're supporting a program down here now for plumbers, electricians, HVAC people, and carpenters. And those jobs will not be replaced by AI. And they're basically very satisfying jobs, and they're well-paying jobs. So I want to spread this out and have that student, when he comes to those questions, let's go into these other areas and think about whether or not those are more interesting for him or her. These kinds of things I've been talking about normally happen in the dining room and the dormitories among people's friends. I want them to physically sit down as seniors or as freshmen in college and ask questions. Who am I? Where do I want to go? How do I expect to get there? What are my obstacles? And I think that having that to test that makes sense to me. And so far, I've sort of invading that community. It's presumptuous of me, but I think there's a whole new dimension to education, which is focused on the individual rather than what we're going to teach the individual. I'll turn it back to you because I always talk too much.
No, absolutely. I think it's work that has been touched upon, right? In different,
it has been touched upon.
Certainly we understand that because of all of the things that you mentioned, what students need in order to be successful is different than it was even 20 years ago. I know when 20 years ago in my career, a strong focus was college, not only college readiness, but graduation from college. Personally, I still think there's tremendous value in that. But what we needed to also focus on was making sure that students were prepared for success, period. And that meant not having the choice made for them when they graduated from high school, but having a full curriculum through 12th grade so that they could make the choice. Do I want to go into a vocation?
Exactly right. Give them the tools to make the choice. And that's the key.
Yes. Yes.
And that's not done formally. It's going to extract from the education part, the present education part. You're not going to do as much physics, chemistry, and calculus, but you're going to take a small chunk of that and have them spend some time on themselves.
And think about what do they want to do?
Yeah.
I mean, all of those questions, I mean, I think they're questions that have value even at a younger age and to help students make sense of what they're learning. Some of the questions that in the curriculum development work that we have engaged in with schools has been to include the questions or the activities where how am I going to use what I learned? What did I learn? How did I learn? And how could I use it? And then even further, how could I use it to make a difference in the world?
Also exposing them to experiences. In other words, words you use like analyst or whatever the name of like physicist. What do those people do? And is that something you want to do? I mean, so many times I look at jobs and people have names on them. And until you go out there, so in the summertime or even during school period, to get these young people out there and seeing and physically looking at what people are doing and how they're interacting. I always kid about this. I wanted to work on a big project. I thought working on dams and things like that were great.
Wow.
I looked around and these people live in trailers for 10 years. So I said, I like the job, but I don't like the living requirements.
Lifestyle.
I wanted a family and so forth. So that was X'd out of my experience. And I think that just getting a chance to test, finding out what you want to test and getting those words, put actually physical experience on those words. I always say to my kids, find out what you're going to do Monday morning physically. And I think that's something we don't do as much. There's some of the New York schools, a friend of mine invented this thing called City in the School, which actually does some of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there are examples. One of the challenges and one of the ongoing questions is how do we share what we know is good practice so that it is really available across the country? Because there are really, really good practices. I'm actually writing a book highlighting what are some really strong practices for moving achievement in a culturally responsive way. And it's not that we don't know, but the examples are few and far between.
You said it all. This thing has changed, and you've got to keep it's in motion. It's a lifelong process. Education is changing, should be changing constantly. And it does, for a long period of time, it's stagnated. You just did this. That was it. I mean, as an engineer, I had specific things I had to do, and that was it. And I got an engineering degree, and I got a job. But that didn't prepare me for a lot of other things that I had to do. And there are a lot, as you say, a lot of best practices. I think writing a book and bringing them forth is a very important thing.
Even the mindset, right? Even the mindset that you can do many different things. I have had several different wonderful positions in the field of education. And people would always ask me, well, why did you leave that job? And I like a challenge. I like doing different things. I was not raised in a community or a family that highlighted entrepreneurship, but that there's so many wonderful things that one can do.
I make the statement that you're going to live to 100, most of the young people today. They're going to have to pivot a number of times in their life. Yes. And when you pivot, you got to make sure where you came from and where you want to go based on some of your capabilities.
Your principles.
The scene changes, you change with it. You don't stay making buggy whips when the cars come out, and you don't stay with certain kinds of careers when AI comes out or when biotech changes things. So I think that's the key to it. And these young people are going to have to pivot, 2 or 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 times in their lives because things are going to change. Just think of if you're in the black record business, then you had cassettes, then you had discs, and now you got this phone thing that does it all.
It's wonderful.
If you're in any of those businesses, you've got to keep moving. And education has too much inertia. I was kidding about this, that my first course that I sponsored up at the Harvard Business School took about 5 years to come to fruition. And this course, which I'm suggesting, was put into one of the colleges in upstate New York. They got it done in less than 12 months. And that's a very important thing because education, academia moves slowly, and it's got to move a little more quickly. I think that's one of my recommendations. Not easy. None of these things we suggest are easy, but academic efforts have to sort of say the world is changing technologically, politically, geopolitically, even socially. We've got to change too, or at least make offerings which allow young people to have those possibilities.
And that's why in terms of, and really, if I had to just choose one area of my work that I believe is the most important, it is supporting that ongoing professional learning, because that profession, we have to learn. We have to have opportunities to think about, how do we incorporate AI? I was at a cocktail party and there were some professors that were saying, well, my students, cannot use AI. So there needs to be a professional learning community where you can talk about how to use it and how it can be helpful. But sometimes people don't have that opportunity to really think and learn together so that we can really prepare our students.
See, that's where you go back to this Department of Education. There are some things they should do, like teacher training, and give incentives because we have to have better teachers. There's no two ways about that. That's what you're talking about. And the teachers have to have the ability to learn themselves. And so there's a whole process that has to be put in place. And I think that's really one of the great weaknesses. And it's very hard to be a teacher. It's not an easy job at all. And we haven't really taken care of them the way we should have. And so
we haven't provided the empowering support and resources. And again, we know how to do it. It's just not pervasive.
Exactly right. Well, you're immersed in this thing, so you know better than I do. But even the external, I can see it. The idea that, a teacher doesn't, the teachers, it's a full-time job. Very rarely you'll see a teacher a weekend marking papers, teacher coaching in the afternoon. Teachers have more than a full-time job, and they're really not compensated for it. They have certain compensations and getting satisfaction, but we have to do more for that. And we also got to say exactly what you said. They have to be what I call re-dipped on a regular basis, taken back and say, here are the new things that have occurred. Some of them you'll have to put into your classes or your curriculum. And it's an absolute requirement because you just can't sit still. The AI is here. It's going to have it.
And it's exciting. It's exciting. And I think it has to be part of like the daily, weekly practice, not just, I think it's wonderful. I love actually facilitating those kinds of retreats where leaders and teachers have an opportunity away from their building, like a think tank. Love it. But also on a daily and weekly basis, you can't be running from class to class to class and not have time to plan and to think and to collaborate.
And there may be a need for a particular position in each school that basically takes that as a requirement, basically interfaces with the teachers and the curriculum and says, here, this may be another leg for the principal of the school, or that's one of their requirements. Is it, are we keeping up? The question should be asked when I ran a company, I always said, every year we got to do something new. And schools were the same. My company, I said, guys, every year, in order to compete, in order to keep up, we've got to do something new. And that may be a mantra that a principal has. Not a lot, going to make a big change, but you're going to add something. You're going to add a particular course or add a particular mentality or workshop, that maybe the kids have during the summer. It's not wasting a summer to me is one of my real crusades, is each summer the child should have the ability to have an experience that he can say, or she can say, this is for me, or this isn't for me, which is just and that's a physical experience, is working in a hospital or working in a factory or, working in
And we can figure that out on a much larger scale than we're doing it. Those private-public partnerships that exist but aren't available to everyone. We can figure it out. We have the resources, if they're used correctly, right, to really
Exactly right.
do that well.
I think some more practical education. I think there are certain, individuals should go to college. I believe in college. I think it's a great experience of all times. Others not. And that's why more focus on the individual. Let the individual decide what it is for he or she to do, and then go in that direction. And if it's college, and there's got to be reasons for going to college. This is why I'm going to college. This is what I think I want to do. And then test it if you can. That's the name of the game. College students in particular should every summer take some kind of an experience and put it under their belt. Northeastern University, for example, has this 5-year program where kids actually go out and test their interest.
They've had that forever. They had that when I was applying to college.
I'm just very impressed with that. Not every school can have 4 years and just you have 3 summers. And I always say everybody should go to graduate school, and they say, why? Well, first of all, you get a chance to look at the world one more time. Second thing is basically you meet a whole new group of people, which lasts you a lifetime. The third thing is not people don't recognize. You get 3 more summers to experiment. And,
Figure things
you know,
out.
in the old days when life expectancy was 50 or 60 years, that's one thing. But today, when it's 100, you've got plenty of time, you know, and therefore, you know, spending a little more time on testing things out and going and doing special things. And that's why I say graduate school to me is if you can afford it and if it fits into your lifetime, it's something you should do because you get this extra time to go out there and test the world.
Well, absolutely. And I think I'm just also thinking about the life expectancy, which is also another reason why engaging everyone in this education endeavor so that everybody does get an education, because we know that education levels do influence life expectancy. And there's still so many people that are not experiencing success.
Definitely. You know, when you get older, your education becomes vital because you learn you can do certain kinds of things and you had to learn them early on. And just the mentality of learning things and feeling the ability that you can learn things.
Being open to it and
carry through your whole life.
Yeah.
This has been very, very exciting to me. Sabrina, you're doing the Lord's work. I think
I'm excited about the work that you're doing as well. I look forward to.
Well, you got a longer job than I do.
Seeing it in
You'll
action.
be around a lot longer. But taking these best practices that you're talking about and exposing them to the system, I think it's a wonderful book to write because there are so many really bright people out there. I mean, one of the schools I'm working with is going to take this course. And in my course, by the way, it's basically a skeleton template. Each school will take it and use it for their unique population. They will add to it, and there'll be innovation. This one school is working on it now. The innovations they're putting into it, they're just very exciting. I give them 4 lines, and they lay out with 2-page syllabus for one session.
That's great, and they have the time to work together to think about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sabrina, this has been fun.
It's been fun. It's been fun. We can do it again.
Do it again, exactly.
Yeah, we can do it again.
And as they say in the trade, may the force be with you.
Likewise. See you soon. Thanks again for inviting me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Again, I'm Dr. Sabrina Hope King. My organization is ATAPE Group, LLC. You can find me on LinkedIn, and our website is atapegroup.org.
I'm Ed Hajim, and I have a presumptuous crusade which has added dimension to college education through a formal course where the student asks, who am I? Where do I want to go? How do I expect to get there? You can read both my books if you'd like. They're on Amazon by just typing in my name, Ed Hajim, and you'll get my 2 books. Anybody who reads the books, I thank you very much. Have a great day.